the interesting thing about like a quote unquote startup is like the power of focusing on one thing. And I think we three like really appreciate the exhibition because we're just able to focus on one thing. And it's hard, when people have submissions and they don't quite understand what on the other side of the table of like what our kind of plan is. And I think it is hard as a former artist to be like, why won't they work with me? Why won't they share my work? And it's just because like you really have to focus on one thing and really like do it really well.
All right, then we are live with episode number 25th, I believe. And today the guests are Derek, Malte, and Madison from Glitch Marfa, which is an analog gallery for internet objects out of Marfa in Texas. So I'm very, very excited to learn the in and outs of this physical gallery displaying digital objects. And so great to have you here, guys. How are you, Madison, Derek, and Malte? How is it going?
It's great. It's great to get the band together.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun conversation. Thanks for inviting the three of us on to talk a little bit about what we do. And we got to keep Malta up and awake here out in Germany. So it'll be a fun conversation for the three of us.
Right. So Malte is in Germany. I'm in Spain. So we are both in Europe. In where are you, Madison and Derek?
We are in Los Angeles. I was about to say Los Angeles, Texas, which actually kind of makes sense for the conversation, but we're in Los Angeles, California.
Awesome. Great. So we're like the middle of the day, right? In LA.
Yeah, just about.
Awesome. So we can start with Glitch Marfa, right? So can you describe a bit about Glitch Marfa and what's the concept and how was the idea born?
Glitch, broadly, you mentioned this at the beginning, Carlo. It's a digital art gallery. It's also a physical art gallery. And so those are the two, I would say, constraints that we really operate all of our products from. We are there to serve the town of Marfa, Texas, and educate the town of Marfa and the surrounding areas and folks who come in to visit Marfa on a weekly and daily basis about internet art and digital art and crypto art. But we're also very much born of this crypto art culture and movement. And another one of our huge missions is to not just educate the physical folks of Marfa, but also like the internet writ large. As you know, and as we know, digital art is very much a movement without jurisdictions and boundaries. And it was important to us to make sure that we were serving that constraint in as much as possible, in addition to the town of Marfa. So that's Glitch. I think more specifically, we bought the gallery a couple years ago, and the mission is really to, educate the world about internet objects that can be owned for the first time in human history. And the first product that we rolled out to kind of exhibit and establish and kind of bring forth that concept was a product called Every 30 Days. I'll let Maddie and Malta jump in here and talk a little bit about how that product came about and how we think about it. Maybe Malta, you want to jump in first?
Yeah, sure. I think it was pretty much a year ago that we first started talking about this. And as Derek mentioned, we basically began with this weird constraint of a gallery in the middle of nowhere in this art oasis that's going to exhibit this art that's in a way completely delocalized, distributed, permissionless. And the one thing or the one thought that we started from, I think, is to changing the discourse maybe sounds a bit grandiose, but to make a contribution to the space where we bring storytelling, writing, education, and a way of approaching these objects to this space that feels elevated, sophisticated, but still very much in keeping with the spirit of the space. And I think that's where we started from. We also wanted to be differentiated in comparison to what we, I think, all perceive to be a certain standardization of how galleries and actors in the space are operating. And so from those two ideas, really the product every 30 days emerged, which combines a long-form text that we're writing with a gallery show. There's always one specific piece. It's almost like a monad, one single object that's supposed to illuminate the oeuvre of an artist, but also a larger theme within our ecosystem. And we combine this exhibition, this text, with a digital poster that's sort of like referencing the tradition of exhibition posters, but in a digital format. Very accessible. You can mint it for like $30-$40. And it's made by a designer and references the idea of the exhibition and the work that's on display. I think that's roughly how I think about the project and how it came to be.
No, that's really exciting. I mean, my follow-up question is, why Marfa, right? I know Art Blocks is based, right? The one that started Code on Chain, right, for generative art. They are based in Marfa. But what is special about this town? Because I've heard many things. I really would like to be there and visit. But can you tell us a bit why it makes it special?
Yeah, I can give a little bit of background there, but then Madison actually does a lot of the work in Marfa. So I'll let her take over here in a minute. Why Marfa? So what I do full time outside of the work I do at Glitch is I run a consumer fund called Collab Currency. And back in 2020, I became obsessed with the concept of the ERC 721 as a digital wrapper to put scarcity around any digital object. Ended up writing a piece that summer called You're Sleeping on Crypto Art to pair with an investment in the seed round of a product called Super Rare. And then just started finding really brilliant founders working at the intersection of consumer culture and Web3, and which led me to the CryptoPunks Discord, which led me to kind of become a founding member of something called Flamingo DAO. And then later on, stumbled into the Art Blocks Discord as a result of some of those early conversations back in 2020. So I started minting squiggles and playing around with on-chain generative art, like these on-chain algorithms that could create procedural on-demand on-chain generative works out of a single on-chain algo, and just like fell in love with the idea and ended up leading the seed round for Art Blocks later that year, early 2021, and became quite close with Eric. And when Eric was describing where he wanted a headquarter at Art Blocks, he mentioned Marfa. And I had understood and heard about Marfa in the past, but it wasn't until later that summer when he had the first ever collectors event in Marfa that I got to actually spend time in Marfa. A whole bunch of us in Flamingo DAO went out there, rented a house, spent a week out there. And I and my business partner, Steve, who runs the fund with me, just became enamored with the town and artistically and creatively what it meant for the last 30-40 years and what Art Blocks was doing as an extension into these digital environments and digital spaces through their presence there. And we wanted to find a way to support that. And so Marfa has become kind of like near and dear to like the mission of Glitch. And we chose Marfa as a result of Eric and Art Blocks and some of what culturally that place has meant for contemporary art and kind of the maverick nature of Donald Judd and why people continue to flock there year after year, decade after decade. I'll let Madison take over to talk a little bit about how we work in Marfa and maybe some of the interesting decisions and thoughtfulness that goes into kind of being present in such a kind of a delicate space.
Yeah, so like what Derek was touching on with Donald Judd, who was a minimalist artist from like that worked primarily in New York. There's this like, and then subsequently moved to Marfa and started making more work that is land-based, still minimalist, just a bunch of different mediums. And so when Eric made the Art Blocks the headquarter of Marfa, as Derek mentioned, there was like an extension of what we believe is like the next phase of the contemporary art movement. in digital art. And so it made a lot of sense to continue to sort of double down and kind of build alongside Art Blocks, because we work so closely with them. And so with the town of Marfa, I always say, people want to go to Marfa, and the joke is, it's just like, it is literally like 2 to 3 streets. And as Malte mentioned, it really in the middle of nowhere in West Texas. It's really hard to get to. So there's a scarcity and a specialness when you do get to it. There's like this resolution where you get to it where you're like, oh my God, I'm finally here. So there's like everything feels a little bit more special because it's kind of difficult. Everything is kind of difficult still. So I think there's a satisfying quality about when things in this space are really fast paced, where you can get to Marfa and really enjoy and absorb it. And so as far as the town of Marfa and working with people, my kind of day to day is hanging out with people who really like to take things slow. Yeah. So, and their internet goes out all the time. And there's just these things that like are analog in Marfa that they adore and we adore as well. As well as them being like diehard art fanatics. And so the integration process has been super interesting. And Derek referenced this on a previous thing yesterday where, there's some, obviously they're like rightfully sort of questioning like, what is digital art? But they're not doing it in this like they're not doing it in a negative sense. They're so curious. So they come to all of our events and they just stay for like 40 minutes and just continue to ask questions, which has been really satisfying, because in this space, I just feel like people make an assumption, an opinion, they post about it on Twitter, and then the conversation's over. But in Marfa, there's like this sense of timelessness where they just like want to sit down and have a burrito and chat. So it's like it's always like zooming way, way in and then zooming way out, where everything is really slow and then also really fast, because we're also, equally very much on the internet. That's Marfa.
Yeah, that sounds very, very unique. I heard stories from visitors, right? That they had to rent a car and drive like 2, 3, 4 hours to get to Marfa, and that there weren't direct flights, right, from pretty much anywhere. So that, as you said, that makes it difficult, but at the same time, I can imagine when you get there, like, okay, so you are kind of disconnected and you pay full attention, right, to what's happening. So that's a very, very interesting concept. And Madison, how often are you in Marfa? Because you are in LA, and can you handle everything kind of remotely, or do you visit it often?
Yeah, I think so. We're there once a quarter and sometimes more. Derek's business partner, Steve, there's 4 owners. And so one of us is there pretty much every other month. So I would say quite a bit. And we launched in 2022, last year. And we do treat this very much like a startup, where we consider rolling out things really thoughtfully and making sure we have products that are interesting to our market. So as we grow, it's I can imagine, we'll be having to go out there and spend more time there, and it's always an endless conversation of how much time we can spend there. So quite a bit. And I think the brilliance of the technology and sort of like the sense of humor is that we can control everything remotely, and so like with this technology, not only is it digital art, but how we're controlling everything is also digital. So we have like a lot of trusted people that help run day-to-day operations. Next year, we'll be opening the gallery once a month for on the weekend, so people will be there. And then the other aspect of that is that the other half of the space is taken up by a restaurant called Other Side, and we have a commercial kitchen in the back where we're able to have a lot of different people with different type of cuisines make food. So it's actually a pretty bustling place, even though the owners are not there for the day to day.
Nice. That's didn't know you had a cuisine next to it. That sounds interesting. And what about the curation process? Because you guys described the first product, right, which is a piece of art every 30 days. And I was wondering, I know you three are part of the curation board. I know Malte used to be working on partnerships with Bright Moments, right, and working on the editorial. And Derek has been pretty much involved a lot with Proof, right? I've seen Derek in the Proof Grails, which is amazing series. So all of you are very much involved, right, in digital art. And I was wondering, so how is it the curation? How is there like a specific process? Are there more curators? How does it work? How do you select what will be displayed in the 30 days product?
I'll tee up Malta. I think Malta should definitely will have a lot of insight on how we think about objects to choose. But I'll tee up the conversation just by maybe explaining how the three of us got together to begin with. So I think we mentioned this right before we started recording, but Madison and I were both at the Bright Moments event in Mexico City about a year ago this week-ish. And there was a moment at the event, I think it was maybe day one or day two of the event, when there were some technology issues with the weather. I don't know if you remember this, Carlo.
Yes.
And we were all
the Wi-Fi.
Exactly. Yeah. We were all just kind of hanging out, and it was so much fun. I mean, the Bright Moments team are consummate professionals, and they know how to make people have a good time, and everybody was really enjoying themselves. But Malta came and introduced himself to me and gave me a kind of a tour of the work before they kind of let the public in. So I got to spend time with Malta, going from room to room and looking at the different associated works by each of the Mexico City artists. And in talking with Malta, came to the realization that he was just very sharp, and his lens on the discourse and an understanding of the work itself was just at a different degree than most folks that I interacted with day to day. And I remember on the plane ride back, I was sharing with Madison. I was like, I really like this guy Malta. Let me go through some of his writing. And we pulled out the Bright Moments. I forget what they call them, like the newsletters or
the quarterly, right?
The quarterly, yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. I still have that one. It's
so well done.
Big edition. Yeah.
And Malta had penned a number of articles in it, and I just thought the writing was just superb, and nailed a lot of my own ideas just at a degree that it was very difficult, I think, for people to communicate. So the long and the short of it is, as we were starting to put together the concept around this first product, it was clear to Madison and I that we wanted to invite Malta to be a huge part of that. And so I'll let Malta kind of take it away, how the three of us think about curation on behalf of Glitch.
Yeah, totally. I think that those were our first conversations, first with Derek and then the three of us. I think one thing to mention is that, I think sort of curation is a very tricky concept, and I think it's a bit misunderstood almost in the space, that it's usually considered which I think is a super cool exercise. For example, you build your own gallery and you put works together that have formal similarities or share a certain color palette or so. And I think that's really fun, but it's I think it's not really what curation is about, right? So curation should be about contextualizing and thinking with works and seeing them in a new light. And much of the discourse has I spent most of my professional life working in the art market in different positions, and there sort of curation is of course mostly tied to space. You narrate something in space, and you contextualize works in space, and you spin up narratives with that. I think it's not yet quite clear what curation will mean in the digital art space if we do not tie to sort of traditional exhibition format where you relate different works together. Where we landed is that we had this approach of a single work, which I think is a sort of a contrast to this constant bombardment with information and this I think underappreciated fact that we spend so much of our life on Twitter, where you read random messages interspersed with this amazing art, and it's all this total information and sensory overload. So I guess as a gesture of distinction from that, we focused on the singular work, and then to use writing as well as the poster as a window, both on the work, but then on a broader issue, on a broader theme that we want to explore, not by talking about it in general, but by focusing on this one specific object, and sort of like that's meant to be a small contribution to how can we think about curating and contextualizing these works, writing a kind of history of the present of the crypto work that we basically see evolving, and then the process itself is it's pretty much a dialogue that we have each week where we talk about things. I think there are so many great artists that we'd love to exhibit, so we don't want to like form a canon of sorts. We don't want to say this is like the textbook most important artist. I think that's sort of like the last thing that we want to do. It's much more fragmentary. We want to spotlight certain things. We definitely want to surprise the people that are following us. We want to let people see things in a new way. We want to bring together artists that I think everybody appreciates for the value they added to the space, like XCopy, and constellate that with artists who are lesser known or not seen in a certain perspective. So I think that are some of the elements of like how we collectively understand curation and Glitch.
Yeah, no, I think you describe it pretty well. I agree with the sense that there is a lot of noise, right? And when you look at social media, it's kind of crazy, right? You probably, if you're on Twitter, spend a couple of hours, you end up seeing 50 to maybe 80 pieces in 2-3 hours, right? So it's a lot of information, and that makes sense. It makes it leaner, right? And you can focus on a specific piece for 30 days, as you mentioned. And what would you say? I mean, this is kind of a different question, but for artists, let's say artists that are emerging artists or are working their way, what will you tell them as advice? How can they be at one point exhibited at Glitch Marfa, for example, and have the time, like 30 days of one piece of themselves? So what do you look for in terms of an artist's career, and what advice would you give them to take the next steps in their development as an artist?
It's a good question. Who wants to go first?
I'm happy to go first.
Go for it, Malte.
I think there are no general rules, neither for like whom we want to exhibit or generally for artists in the space. I would always encourage artists to be bold, to do things differently, not to follow the tastes of like big collectors or other artists that they look up to. Be bold to do what you think is best. Be experimental. I think one artist that just embodies that for me, 113, from Mathcastles, where we exhibited terraforms. I think he's a great example of someone just completely singular and innovative. I think that's the spirit that I always would encourage artists to have in their own ways.
I know this is kind of like obvious, but I personally read all of it. People submit stuff info at Glitch Marfa, and like we look at everything, and I think the interesting thing about like a quote unquote startup is like the power of focusing on one thing. And I think we three like really appreciate the exhibition because we're just able to focus on one thing. And it's hard, when people have submissions and they don't quite understand what on the other side of the table of like what our kind of plan is. And I think it is hard as a former artist to be like, why won't they work with me? Why won't they share my work? And it's just because like you really have to focus on one thing and really like do it really well. And it's just one artist and one object, right? And amidst a sea of work, a sea of talent, like every day you as you said, like there's so much to look at. And so just to draw attention it's like you have to weed out almost 100% of everything. But I feel like building relationships with people is the thing, so that when the time comes where, you know, we have whatever 50 employees and it's not just us three, and we have more exhibitions, like that's also the power of this, is that it is a digital gallery. So we're not limited to physical space, is that we have, you know, a lot of ideas for like a lot of different physical and digital exhibition. And when the time comes, it's like a necessary transition to work with the artists that we form relationships with.
Yeah, the only those were both brilliant answers. I'll add just something very small here. The only other advice I'd give is I think the making of creative work is very much like a inward and authentic to an individual's process, and that it can be tempting when you go on the internet or go on Twitter or see, you know, Tyler Hobbs generate tens of millions of dollars in a drop, like that you have to make algorithmic work, or you see Sam Spratt, you know, getting all of this attention around this masterful one-of-one concept that he put out into the world, that you've got to make conceptual, interesting, like conversational work like that. Or, you know, pick an artist that has performed well economically, or is networked, that you kind of have to change your style to meet them. I will say the thing that I look for is just like how the authenticity that the artist has to the work that they're making and putting out into the world. It just is, it can create such a powerful resonance with others who may not see work like that. And so it's tempting to kind of want to port your style or port yourself to another direction, but sometimes the most powerful work really is just like this very intimate experience where you are creating something that only you can create. It's like your unique advantages, your footprint, and the way you view the world, and making work that's authentic and organic to that can really stand out.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I mean, the three answers are fantastic. I think many artists can learn a lot from that. And actually, if we look at the shows and the exhibitions you have done, you can see how you follow those, I wouldn't say rules, right? But those, ideas, right? If we look at some of the artists you have showcased, so right now you have Emily Xie, and I got to meet her in New York, and I think her work is brilliant. But you also had shows with Grand June, right? Which is also very, very unique and simplistic art, and Die with the Most Likes, which it's completely different, right? From this is a different kind of more conceptual and trying to draw attention into different things. So can you tell us a bit about those events? Because it's not only the product you mentioned, right? The 30 days, you also run different events, different shows. So can you tell us, maybe we can start with the one with Die with the Most Likes, because that was happening physically in Marfa, but the internet was going crazy, right? Everybody was looking at the photos, looking at what was happening there. So can you tell us a bit about that? What happened there? How was that experience?
So we ran, I think, 11 events during Art Blocks weekend. Some were exhibitions, some were, you know, podcast recordings, panels. I guess the last thing I'll say about the curation process that dovetails into this is that I think our strengths is that we both, I mean, all three of us rely on our gut when we're just like, that's it. There's something there and that's it. And then we can have a conversation about it and stuff. And I think I was in charge of organizing the events with the presenters. And so really the credit is through the presenters. Like, as a gallery, once you decide to work with somebody, it's really, for us, our job is to facilitate the vision that they have. It's not really for us to be like, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. It's really like, and so the people as Transient Labs that came up with this idea of the traveling flea market with Die. And so when he told me that idea, it wasn't, I'm not like a no person. Like in improv, as a dancer, the last thing you say to a person is no when you're dancing with a person or acting or whatever. It's always yes. And it's always, how do you like build somebody else's vision through listening? And if there's constraints, like obviously build those into like the solution. But with Die, it really was so so hands off, in the sense of like, here are your parameters, here's the rules, and how far do you want to take this vision? And so like with the pawn shop, they were really obsessed with the idea of like an exchange of just like really horrible goods. And it became a performance art piece, and in a way that I don't think any of us imagined, like how interesting that it got, where people brought like tires from the side of the road to barter with Die in exchange for another sort of, for lack of a word, like piece of shit, honestly, where it's like, you know, there were like porn books and stuff like that, like these grotesque images, to just bring up a dialogue about excess and exchange and what do all these like these imbued products mean to people. And then with the Rothko exhibition, that also was a part of them coming up with this idea of creating a mint that was accessible to the outside world, that had like 0 out of 0 promotional activity. It just dropped. And so we saw the outputs and we were like stunned by the outputs, because it's like Die has this humorous, fantastical quality to his work. But then you see these outputs that are aesthetically very gentle and very pleasing to the eye, you know? So I think we're all really excited to have all those juxtapositions all happening at the same time.
I'll just add, you touched on it already, but when you both Transient and Die have this quality where they know where the lines are, and then they know exactly how to break them in ways that are interesting. And Maddie said it best, which is when you find people to work with, or you find artists, or you find, in the case of Transient and Chris and Marco and Ben over there, when you find people who understand how the rules can be broken in interesting ways, you just get out of the way and you support the vision and you let them run. And it leads to results like the traveling flea market, which, you know, was one of the more interesting, I think, like in my view, like one of the more interesting things to happen in crypto art in a long time. If you were there, or you're on the internet, or you were watching what was unfolding, it was a very exceptional experience for everyone involved.
Yeah, maybe to add, like one of the ideas that we touched on at the beginning of the conversation was that Glitch is intertwining these digital and physical spaces. And I think the Art Blocks weekend is this pinnacle of really, I mean, of course, a celebration of on-chain generative art, but also just more broadly a celebration of digital culture, crypto culture. And that event in particular, the Die with the Most Like events, I think sort of like really pioneering what's possible at this weird intersection of like the physical and the digital in an experimental, artistic and fun way.
I think that's a perfect example to what you mentioned, the mission of combining physical gallery with the internet and digital works. I think that's a perfect example, and I'm sure more collections, more different kind of projects will emerge that will happen there, but everybody will be paying attention online. And I think that's great because it's distributed out of Marfa, right? With people using their cell phone or taking videos, and then everybody that couldn't be there because it's complicated can see what's happening. So that's very exciting. And by the way, so let's say some of the listeners wants to visit Glitch Marfa. Would you recommend, I mean, they should they look for events that are announced and will happen, or they can just plan their trip whenever they want? How is it, like, what's the thought process there for people that are willing to travel, right, out of Europe, out of US, different parts of the world? What would you recommend them to experience Glitch Marfa?
Great question. So Derek had this idea of optimizing. So the short answer is we're not open every day. And the long answer is it's because Marfa's very quiet. It's an incredibly, the economy is driven by tourism, for better or for worse. And so on, from Mondays to Thursdays at 4 p.m., it's pretty much just locals. And I don't know if we mentioned, like, the population is under like 2,500 people. It's incredibly small. So economically for us, we still have to be strategic about how we can open and making sure that it's successful on multiple aspects for us. So the way that Derek had this idea of every 30 days came about is like, how can we really create an outdoor space that's interesting for people to engage with when we're not open? So I think the live stream that's on Glitch Marfa that showcases the Danvers display every month does a good job of kind of locating the viewer. But if you can imagine taking 10 steps back, everything is viewable by the street. And so we've arranged the 30-day exhibition to be kind of flanked, and Derek can talk about this like computer sculpture that we have, where they can tap a chip and it like uploads the exhibition to their phone, and they can read about the exhibition. But like ingeniously, the displays themselves pivot to the street, so they're able to enjoy the exhibition from the street. And then, as we continue to grow, the hope is that we have, multiple days a week that we're open, that people can come in inside and enjoy the gallery.
Yeah, I'll just pick up where Maddie dropped off there. So the short answer to your question, Carlo, is that any day of the week, any time of day, whether it's 3 o'clock in the morning on a Monday, you will be able to walk up to Glitch Gallery and enjoy the full exhibition. And that's because of how we've constructed the front of the gallery, such that we have these beautiful large windows at the very front of the gallery, and a sculpture outside that's powered by one of my portfolio companies. They're called IYK. And essentially what they do is you tap the computer sculpture with your phone. Every phone has an NFC chip reader in it, whether it's a Samsung or an Apple, and it will present to you a list of modules to interact with the exhibition. It could be reading about the exhibition. It could be viewing the live stream. It could be minting one of the 1,000 posters that accompanies every exhibition each month, and a number of other ways to engage with the exhibition from outside. To Maddie's point, eventually we're going to collapse these experiences such that you'll be able to walk in or out or enjoy we've got screens all throughout the gallery that are facilitating the exhibition as well, not just that big, huge 5x5 Danvers screen in front. And you'll be able to kind of like immerse yourself with the rest of the artist's work from the collection. But for now, it's fully approachable from even just outside. The town of Marfa itself is incredibly interesting. There's so much to do. Maybe I know Malte, as someone who kind of came into Marfa from overseas this last year, maybe you can talk about your journey over there. And obviously it's a little bit inside baseball because you work at Glitch, but maybe some of the things that you were interested in doing coming into town for the first time.
I mean, for me, it was like doubly surreal, I think. So I actually got quite sick on the flight there, and then I was at this bad night in a hotel in Austin, and then I met somebody. I think it was like on the Outbox Discord, who was going to drive me there. That was like, oh God, hopefully it's not some maniac. And then it was like a very nice person, an incredibly kind couple, and they drove me all the way to Marfa, and then. I met Derek in Mexico, and I actually didn't get to meet Maddie, and then we were talking each week, like at least once. So we spent a lot of time together, like virtually online, and it's all about this gallery, and you see like different images about how to do the sculpture, but I've just never been there. And then completely jet lagged, not in the best physical condition, I arrive and literally car stops in front of the gallery. I get out, there it is, and then I walk into Derek and Maddie. So that was quite surreal. Yeah, I mean, Derek briefly mentioned it, but it's very hard to understand how small and unassuming Marfa is in many ways. It's, so you're sort of like, it's anticlimactic after the surreal. It's like, it's two streets, wow. But then you sort of like find the magic in the details, I think. I mean, I was absolutely stoked to see, obviously, like the Glitch building and then the Outblocks building, but especially the Judd Foundation. Like, I'm a pretty hardcore, perhaps you can even see it in our apartment, a pretty hardcore minimalist aesthetically, and like a huge Donald Judd fan. So being able to see those works in former military buildings and the Judd Foundation that he selected specifically to show his works is absolutely stunning. I was also there, and like another favorite artist of mine, Robert Irvin. He has a work that kind of like it's very hard to describe. It's like a building / installation that's about the refraction of light, quite from dawn to dusk. And we were there during the equinox, and it's the perfect time to see the work, basically, and so you were able to walk through the work. If you have a chance to see the Robert Irvin work or the Donald Judd work in Marfa, it's out of this world. I think it's yeah. I mean, probably some people might have been to Dire Beacon in the north of New York. That's, I think, a very stunning experience to see minimalist works, but the austerity of the landscape in Marfa lends a different quality to that work, and sort of like seeing it, seeing that work in that environment is very, very special. Was my personal absolute highlight.
Yeah, to be honest, I cannot wait to visit. I hope I can make it next year. I know that when was the last event? Was it like 2 months ago, right? So it's during summer, I guess, like September?
Right at the end of summer. Yeah, so it's, as Malte mentioned, it's on the equinox, so it's summer into fall. I'm waiting. We're waiting on the dates for kind of Art Blocks gathers all the information and then kind of decides when it is. So hopefully it'll be around that time this year. I thought it was great weather, a little hot, but like also Marfa, has seasons. So we have to, it's as the Art Blocks community grows that goes to Marfa, it's kind of like we have to assess when the best time of year is.
Since we started to talk a bit about the future, right, and the next event. So first, is there like anything planned like over the next few months? And if not, I mean, and besides that, I would like to understand like what are your plans, because you have been mentioning that this is your first product. You of course see this growing, right? The Glitch Marfa, but also Marfa as a town, also the digital art movement. So yeah, I would like to understand a bit what are the plans, or how do you see these evolving, Glitch Marfa evolving over the years, right? Like what's the mission? What's the vision there?
I mean, this is something that Malte touched on this, but we meet very regularly, and our meetings are very efficient. But it's just the three of us. And so maybe I'll talk a little bit about the constraints that we operate in, and then I can talk a little bit about kind of the evolution of where we're going. So the three of us, Madison's the only full-time on Glitch every minute of every day. She's got a whole bunch of stuff that she's always working on, both in Marfa and also for each of the monthly exhibitions. But for Malte and I, like we spend a lot of time on Glitch, but we also have other work that we do. And so, we have to be very cautious about making sure that the quality of the products that we release are very thoughtful, that are within the constraints of the three of our ability to kind of put them together. And that also we think can actually move the needle on, how Glitch can build over time. So the first thing I'll say is we are very committed to the every 30-day product. We think it's a beautiful expression of the work that we want to celebrate and draw focus to on a 30-day cadence. And we continue to do that and have some exciting ways to modify and evolve and change that as time goes on, and make sure that we're really doing our best to kind of storytell all of the special things that are happening in crypto art on a month-to-month basis. As you alluded to, we have also been working for months now on other types of expression. And so ways that we can leverage the ingredients of our physical space, the town of Marfa, our networking on the internet, our insight as curators, our interactions with artists, to take those ingredients and point them in maybe a slightly different direction as an extension of what we're doing with every 30 days. So without going into too much detail on what that is, we have thought very carefully and spent a lot of time, I would say over the last 3 months, building something and considering to move the chains forward on something that we're hoping to announce next year. I mean, we're already at the end of this year, but something that we feel very proud of and something that we think will continue to grow the work that we're doing at Glitch in a very authentic and organic way.
We were discussing at some point to scale Glitch faster. That was an option that was on the table, and sort of we deliberately decided to roll this out very organically. Like if you look at the first post, the sales like Glitch grew very slowly with like a very committed core community, and I think we enjoy that a lot, and we want to continue to grow in that fashion. So the next product that we will launch, I think, is going to uphold the same values that we championed so far. So really focused on contextualization, best-in-class storytelling, adding sort of a level of sophistication and curation to the space that I think that many people resonate with. I think that's something that we want to extend in whatever direction we go next.
I'm just like so interested in like the sort of traditional aspects of art world and art market. And so like there's something really interesting that there's these things we've been exploring that are like the value proposition of what we do say is like very analog. And there's something so satisfying. It's like almost like, you know, when you buy like a really old school watch and it's really exciting because there's no digital component to it. It's almost like new and you're like, whoa, this is edgy or whatever. That's sort of how I feel about like the ideas of the new products we're like planning on rolling out. Is it's kind of like a very old school approach to gallery life that I feel really excited about and enthusiastic, that I feel like gives this space like almost like guardrails, or like if you go bowling, you know how when you're a kid, they like put up those bumpers, like it gives this kind of like weightedness and meatiness to what we're doing, which I just find really fulfilling, really interesting, and I think it carries the space forward into like a more robust experience for many different types of people. But we can't say anything what it is, so it's kind of like a tease.
Yeah, we have to wait until next year. I hope early next year, but that sounds very exciting. I also like this approach, right, of doing things high quality first instead of trying to do many things, right, on something massive. So I think that's how things grow, right, organically, and that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, super exciting. I mean, congratulations on this project, because I know it's a challenge, right, to operate a physical gallery. But just that is a challenge. But then doing it kind of remotely in this town that is, very very isolated, but also very special. So congrats. I think it's amazing, and hope I can visit soon. And before we leave, I have a tough question. I used to ask all the guests, and it's what are your three artists that inspire you? And could be any kind of artist, could be physical artist, and could be emerging artist, could be somebody that's established. But yeah, if we can get three names that you enjoy, that you're a fan of, that will be amazing.
I find 113 super inspiring. Just absolutely great artist for me. Someone who's really showing us what digital art can be, and that we should be satisfied with where we're currently at. We should push forward. Actually, I'll have to mention. I'm sorry, but another is Kim Asendorf, who's a German artist. I in my mind one of the best generative artists. A friend of mine. And on the AI side, I'm deeply fascinated by Roope Rainisto and by Claire Silver. I think both of them are really, like, for me, unlock the aesthetic of AI, sort of beyond the ability to generate generic images, to really show the uniqueness and the unique aesthetics that are made available by that medium.
Yeah, it's a fantastic list, Malte. Big fan of all of them as well.
Madison, you're up.
No, you can go. Go.
Okay. I mean, I love Malte's list, of course. The answer that I don't think this is going to be a shock to anyone, but I think, Snowfro is probably the most important artist of this whole movement, on so many dimensions. From a risk-taking perspective, from a seeing around corners perspective, from an innovator's perspective, from a cultural and creative perspective, his influence has rippled out to all corners of this technology, whether people realize it or not. I think history will look back at his work and his thoughtfulness as an artist and as a creative and as a technologist, and put him right up there with some of the meaningful voices who have helped build this entire infrastructure over the last decade around blockchains and crypto and Web3.
I knew that Derek was going to say that, so I could leave
held
that.
off.
Yeah, no problem. So I can't help. I mean, the very, very, very like top of the list. I have to say that. I'll go a little bit off the beaten path right now and say one other artist who is inspiring to me of late is an artist named Douglas, who I'll post just a link to some of his works that I've collected recently. I actually got a chance to meet Douglas because he's a long haul truck driver. He drives a 20-foot box truck across the country, and he pulled over, I think drove 50 miles out of the way during Art Blocks weekend because he had been listening to the 100 Proof podcast that I record. He's been following Art Blocks and Proof and Super Rare and a number of like the art platforms and the artists on these platforms for a long time on Twitter, and wanted to just start finally meeting people. All he does all day is, long haul truck. He's driving produce and electronics and equipment across the country, but he's also a digital artist. And he finally felt like he was able to connect with folks that he had been hearing about, watching, listening for years during Art Blocks weekend this last year. And when he showed me some of his work, I was taken aback because it gets back to the question you asked at the very beginning, Carlo, which was, what do I look for in an artist? And he's a untrained digital painter who works primarily on, iPad and laptop. And he is creating these masterful pieces, like dripping with talent, of the landscapes that he views as he drives across the country every day. And I think he is someone that, we're still very relatively unknown, but is a symbol to me of like why this technology is so important, why it's so interesting, and finding your authentic voice and your authentic form in the work that you make and having it be appreciated by anyone around the world. So Douglas with an X is someone that I've recently really grown fond of and have started collecting some of his work.
Yeah, I'm looking at his work now. It's amazing. Thanks for sharing that, Derek. I think it's a great. I mean, the two pieces I'm seeing look fantastic. So love to look at more of those. And by the way, everybody, for all the listeners, all these links, all these artist names and collections, everything will be in the description of the episode show, so you can find it very conveniently there.
Okay, so my three artists. So I come from a performance background, like pretty hardcore dance and performance background. So I'm really interested in this artist named Jibs Cameron, and her persona is called Dynasty Handbag. I see a lot of overlap with Guy with the Most Likes, and her, and she just does these. She calls them weirdo nights. If you live in LA, I find like people who work with the body as a medium, like probably more interesting than most things, just because to me, I think bodies are really interesting. So that's my first. My second is an artist that we worked with very closely last year named Molly Dixon. She is just a brilliant collage-based and motion picture artist. She has an NFT project called Computer Cowgirls, and she's also an activist and raised money for, she's a native Texan, so she raised money for abortion rights that Texas helped to overturn in the US. So I feel really passionate about that work. And I guess the last person for me, honestly, is Die. I think this space, what's really interesting about this space is how it's almost like it's like artists are now like the new celebrities in crypto culture, right? So to have the privilege of working with him and understand how deeply passionate about his work and how thoughtful, I think his work can come across as like very brash, so inappropriate. A lot of people are like, what's happening here? But how thoughtful he is about what he's putting out. It really requires the viewer to like really look at what he's doing. There's a proof episode a couple months ago that he was featured on, and you just have to listen to how he processes the world and how he puts it into his work. So that would be my third, just like how I'm interested in him as a person too. He's just like such an interesting guy. So
No, amazing list, guys. I think it's a fantastic lineup. And the question is, will we see in the next showcase for the 30 days Glitch Marfa product, will we see any pieces from these artists? Have you thought about that? How much in advance do you actually decide that? It's an interesting question.
I would say we improved. We're now sort of like, we already know it for December and January. And then we will be talking about the pick for February. But it took some work to get that.
Yeah.
I think with all of those artists, we either have worked or would love to work in whatever capacity.
Yeah, I'll also just add, it's a very fluid conversation. And some of my favorite, I do a ridiculous amount of calls every day. I think I'm averaging like 14 or 15 calls a day right now, just with working with portfolio companies and founders and LPs and folks in the industry. And the call I would say I look forward to most every week is the call with Malte and Madison. We have two calls now, but the Monday call that I do with these guys, because we're always talking about like new ideas and going back and forth on artists and how to think about work and what's inspiring or who we should feature or why not. And so the conversations, to Malte's point, we've obviously chosen December's because it's happening in a few days, and we're now putting the final touches on that exhibition. And for January, we have a good sense of who we're working with. But outside of that, it is a very fluid conversation, and we are very much keeping our ear to the ground and watching everything that's happening in the space and really trying to locate through discourse how to keep putting out work that we think is symbolic and emblematic of how this space is getting constructed.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I can see that you guys have an amazing chemistry, and it's really remarkable, right? Because you met 1 year ago, around 1 year ago only. So that's fantastic. And again, congratulations on what you're doing, and thanks for sharing all the details, right? And how Glitch Marfa works, right, from the early days and now, and what we can expect for the future. And yeah, hopefully we can meet again. We can have another show, and yeah, maybe we can meet at Marfa one day. So fantastic to have you guys. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for the invite.